Hello everyone and welcome to my review for Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 128. I hope you all had a very enjoyable Halloween, at least as enjoyable as it can be under these circumstances. I did not succeed in having a fun Halloween, however, it could always be a lot worse. You could be in Shibuya on Halloween of 2018, like these poor bastards. So this week's chapter is mostly split up into two parts. We've got the first half where we're catching up with the Kyoto students, and then the second half where we're seeing more of the fight between Yuji and Todo against Mahito. So the first part with Kyoto is mostly to sort of get Mekamaru's last words to Miwa. The guy didn't really get, a chance to have, to finally get his thoughts out at the very end when he fought against Mahito. He just kind of got killed. So him sort of reviving himself with his little speaker things was mostly an opportunity to do that, get some finality. Seems like we've had that a little bit lately with some of the series that I've been covering. But Mekamaru tells Miwa that there's no need for them to go to Shibuya anymore, which means that they are going to Shibuya, and they're not going to listen to him. And he basically just apologizes to Miwa and tells her to be happy, and that as long as she's happy, then his wish will be fulfilled. So it just goes to show you that he really did care about Miwa and is concerned for her well-being, regardless of whether or not he's there to make sure that she's alright. So there's that, I guess. It basically confirms sort of the relationship between the two of them, or at least that Mekamaru did have a lot of feelings for Miwa. Now, the Kyoto students and Urahime, who's here, they're all pretty glum, except for Momo, who now really, really wants to kill whoever's responsible for making Miwa cry. And this is where I feel like I should get into Mahito's fatal mistake. So, Mahito is quite the scary guy, and he's basically the character that's responsible for us not being able to have nice things. He fucking kills everyone. All of the major character deaths that have happened have been at the hands of Mahito. But there is sort of a backfire to these characters that are just like, ooh, aha, I'm so wacky, and I just kill everyone without a second thought. Is that you get put on a lot of people's shit list. So, let's think about it here for a minute. The first person that really Mahito got on the bad side of was Yuji when he killed Junpei. So we've already got Yuji having a grudge against Mahito. Then you have him killing Nanami, which, is going to make Yuji even more fucking pissed off against him. But now you also have to consider Ino, who is not dead. He's in not great shape, but, Nanami was extremely important to Ino. He didn't want to be, promoted to a grade 1 sorcerer unless it was Nanami who was recommending him. So whenever Ino gets back, he's gonna have some issues with Mahito. So that's two people already. Now you have the stuff with Nobara, which is now it's just triple the emotional toll on Yuji. But then you also have to consider Megumi and the rest of the students at the Tokyo school. Now they're going to have an issue with Mahito. And now you have the final death of Mekamaru. You're obviously going to have Miwa. And now, most obviously Momo, but really, the whole of the Kyoto school. And I guess Todo, too, because Mahito has been the one that's been giving his brother a hard time. So you can see where the problem with Mahito's whole worldview and way about going things is that in being just so reckless and haphazard and just taking people away from others, is that you're going to have an endless supply of people that are going to keep trying to fucking kill you. Sort of like the logic with the Demon Slayers in Muzan, was that he basically created all of these people that would literally not stop at anything to kill him for what he had done. So that's basically what you've got going on with Mahito here. And Todo's speech from last week about how so long as there are still Jujutsu sorcerers alive, They will carry on the mission of the Jujutsu sorcerers who have passed away. So, no matter how many Jujutsu sorcerers Mahito kills, there will always be more coming for his ass. And that's going to be what eventually does him in. So, I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the video. But after that, we've basically got more fighting between Yuji and Todo against Mahito. And this fight has been really good so far. It's really, really good. This is probably shaping up to be the best fight of the Shibuya incident, which is saying a lot when we've had Yuji versus Chozo and the Zenin team versus Dagon, which are, like, up there in terms of the fights. They're two of the best fights in the series. I mentioned, I think last week, but I plan on doing a top 10 fights video for the series. And I don't know if I'll do 10. I may do 5, because doing a top 10 video may just be way too hard. I think doing a top 5 would be much more interesting, because I think that the 5 best fights in Jujutsu Kaisen are all really close. So it would probably make for... I mean, it would be easier for me to do, but I think it would just be a much more interesting ranking to just have the top 5. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'll still do the top 10. I think it'd be weird to do like some strange number like top 7. I don't think that would work. But anyway, this fight's been shaping up really well so far. The two of them are wailing on Mahito pretty hard, but as Mahito points out, Todo, no matter how strong his attacks are, like Todo does the Black Flash on him, Todo's attacks are not able to harm his soul, which is something I pointed out. Fucking Christ. I pointed that out in the last couple weeks, is that Todo does not have the means to hurt Mahito's soul with his attacks, no matter how good he is. So, in this scenario, Todo is more of like a support character, which is interesting when you consider... I mean, just look at the guy. You'd never think that Todo would be a support character, in terms of like the usefulness of his abilities, but in this situation he is. So, I don't think Todo's obviously not going to do like the decisive blow. But I still think he's going to be extremely helpful, because Mahito is pretty helpless against Todo's ability for most of this. He does eventually figure out to use body repel and basically just create a mass of danger so big that there's not really anything you can switch with to get out of danger. Now, Todo himself, I guess, seems to acknowledge that he's not super useful in this fight. I mean, like, he's really useful, but he's not able to do big hits on Mahito. And he actually thinks to himself how he hasn't really gotten stronger since the last time he and Yuji had met. So now he's trying to make himself much better and trying to grow during this fight, which we see with him using the Black Flash. Now, when this chapter ends off, Mahito does a big body repel, and it seems that we're going back to the surface in Shibuya, which leads me to believe that we're wrapping this up soon. This definitely, like, the way that this fight is going, like, the whole city is getting wrecked. We're in the final stages of the Shibuya incident. I think what happens afterwards may be like the Shibuya incident aftermath or something, because I don't think the Kyoto school is going to be able to do very much by the time they get there. You've basically just got, like, who is left? There's Chozo. Chozo's alive, and we may get some interesting stuff with that I'll get into. But if Mahito is neutralized, basically, we have to see what's going on with Imposter Ghetto and Mei Mei. We still don't know, and the fact that we don't know is a little concerning. I think that in itself may be a hint as to what's happened. They may be there as, like, a cleanup thing, and to, like, address the situation, see what's going on, have Mai meet up with Maki and Naobito, stuff like that. But at the end of the chapter, Mahito says, "Time to kick it up a notch, Itadori. This is our last chance to curse each other." Now, I've been sort of reconsidering some things about Mahito's role in the story. I know I've said a lot that Mahito seems like someone who's going to be around for a very long time. He's endgame, basically. the guy is going to be around until the very end of the story, where Yuji finally defeats and overcomes the person who's basically like his antithesis, everything that Yuji is not. He defeats him, and that's like the final opportunity at growth before he goes on to fight and defeat the main villain, whoever that will be by that point in the story. But now, as I've been saying a lot for various series recently, I'm not so sure. Mahito saying, "This is our last chance to curse each other," is like, hey, no matter what happens, only one of us is walking away from this. So, I have a feeling Mahito doesn't really plan on running away this time. Which could work if Mahito is killed here. So, I don't remember when. It was a while ago. I don't remember if it was my video about Mahito or if it was one of my chapter reviews, but someone said the dynamic between Yuji and Mahito is sort of like the dynamic between Ichigo and Ulquiorra, which is like, yeah, I mean, that kind of works. In which case, Mahito would be like the final big villain that Yuji has to defeat for this chunk of the story. With the deaths of the other disaster spirits, and presumably the advancement in Imposter Ghetto's plan, this may be like the end of the disaster spirits arc, saga, whatever the hell you want to call it. Like, their part in this story is going to be over with the end of the Shibuya incident, and afterwards we're going to move on to something else, which I'll discuss in a minute. But if that's the case, then defeating Mahito here makes sense, because what we've had a lot in the Shibuya incident is Yuji really accepting what it means to be a Jujutsu sorcerer and to accept his role as a Jujutsu sorcerer. You see with his fight with Chozo, I think he gets stabbed in the liver, and he's like, oh shit, I'm going to die. No, I don't need to survive this. Anyone else can rescue Gojo, it doesn't need to be me. I understand my role. You had stuff like that, then you had the stuff after Nanamine got killed, where he's saying stuff like, oh, you know, I'll carry on your burden, Nanami. I'll take it over from here. The stuff with Todo explaining to him what it means to be a Jujutsu sorcerer. And then you have Mahito, who proclaims himself to be a true curse. You have Yuji, regardless of whatever happens after Shibuya, finally accepting and taking up what it means to truly be a Jujutsu sorcerer, and in doing that defeats his first true curse. That could work with whatever Gege is doing with the story after this point, which I will get into now, is with the stuff that's happened to Sukuna in Shibuya, and the possibility that Gojo will not be unsealed anytime soon. We have to consider that Yuji is likely going to have his execution sped up to right now. Like, they're going to kill him right now. Or, you know, like, in the near future. And I think that may spark something akin to, like, Marvel Civil War, where you have people that are trying to save Yuji, and then all the people on the other side that are trying to kill Yuji. You could probably have something similar to the Goodwill event, but more of like a large-scale thing, and it wouldn't necessarily just be a divide based on the school, because you'd have people from Kyoto, like Todo, who would be trying to save Yuji, and then you could have other people from the Tokyo school, like, I don't know, maybe the third-year guy, maybe, I don't know, some of the other people, like Kusakabe or something, like people that aren't really that familiar with Itadori. Those people would go after him. You'd basically have Yuji's friends, maybe, versus the people that are like, alright, he's gotta go, he's like a fucking nuke, you gotta get rid of the guy, he's too much of a danger to have around. And you'll have like this big sorcerer civil war, basically. That could happen. That's like pivotal depending on whether or not Gojo comes back. Because if Gojo comes back, that shit's not gonna happen. Or at least if Gojo comes back with all of his powers. Like, it's not gonna happen. Because Gojo's basically been the whole reason that Yuji has been allowed to exist throughout the story. It's because if they do anything, Gojo will just kill all of them. Which he can just totally do. So that's completely dependent on whether or not Gojo gets out or not. Then we have the stuff going on with Imposter Ghetto, who a lot of people think is the original Noritoshi Kamo. Pretty sure that's his name. The big evil sorcerer from several hundred years ago, responsible for the Death Womb paintings, which also connects to Chozo, with Noritoshi Kamo, the Kyoto student, being the future head of the Kamo clan, and the presumed relationship between him and Chozo, and the rest of the Death Womb paintings. We may get something with that. I have a feeling that we're going to get something involving the big families after this, or at least at some point in the future. I'm pretty sure Gege said that we're at some point going to get something about, like, the Zenin family. Mostly in regards to, like, all of the weapons Tochi had, because Gege said he got them from, like, a Zenin armory. So we're going to learn about the big families at some point. If a bunch of big, like, political, like, Jujutsu political stuff happens revolving around Yuji after this, that would probably also be a really good opportunity for that to happen. But, yeah, that's really all I have to say about this week's chapter. This is that segment of the episode where I talk about this week's anime episode. So, I don't have too much to talk about episode 5. It's good. I actually quite like Geto and Jogo's voices. Jogo's voice was, like, deeper than I expected? I don't know. It was a bit different, but I've gotten used to it and I quite like it. The second year's voices are great. They fucked up the subtitles a little bit, which was weird. The only, like, sort of criticism I had of the episode was the Megumi versus Sukuna fight was blown way the fuck out of proportion. Like, it was not that Dragon Ball crazy. I have no idea how the hell Megumi's insides were not liquefied after that. They exaggerated that fight a little too much. And also, this is more of like a criticism of the directing, but I don't think every time someone remembers a quote they need to go into a fucking flashback. Like, we were not shown Yuji's grandpa that often. So hopefully they change that up a little, because that kind of, like, really, like, show don't tell or whatever, or, like, sometimes you just need the words. You don't need to see the whole fucking scene again. You can just, like, have the quotes going into their mind or whatever. You don't need to see everything a million times over to remember what was being remembered. That's just, like, a little nitpicky criticism. I have to say, this week's episode covered literally everything that I thought it would, and it looks like next week's episode is going to do everything that I thought it would as well. So hopefully I continue being correct. It looks like we may actually get a little bit of training filler next episode, seeing how the second years were training Nobara and Megumi, which I really don't mind. Like, as long as it doesn't mess up the pacing, I really don't mind seeing how they were training them, because there was a lot of stuff that we didn't really see. I know Gege's talked about some stuff that they never got around to showing, like showing more stuff going on with Junpei so you can get a better idea of his character. If they do filler stuff like that, I really don't mind. As long as it's not time-killing stuff, and the filler actually serves to help the narrative, I don't mind it. But with that, that's really all I have to say this week. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell. I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reviews every week, and I do Jujutsu Kaisen character discussions every other week. This Tuesday, I'm going to be making a video talking about Geto, so if you're interested in that, you should definitely subscribe so you don't miss it. If you enjoy other series such as Record of Ragnarok, Chainsaw Man, and Kengan Omega, I do videos on those series as well. So if you're interested in those, you should definitely check out my channel. If you enjoy discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to it on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.